That's going to be a fun one. So Magnus Carlsen, he gets the eyeballs, he gets the attention, but he's actually not the highest scoring Norwegian at the moment. And that's a fun note that we should mention.
Absolutely. Praggnanandhaa also on perfect score facing Alexander Pretke, but all eyes on Anton Smirnov and Vladislav Artemiev. The handshake is there.
Is in, and Artemiev, he's such a gentleman, always respecting his opponent. You see the handshake, he meant it. He stood up for it a little bit, and we have what seems to be a Spanish game coming our way, and it is looking like, I saw a knight come out to f6, but did he include a6 is the big question.
That's the big, no, actually it's knight g7, we got fooled.
Oh,
okay.
I have to say, Peter, I love the decision.
Yes, getting out of the familiar positions, going for some murky, not exactly entirely sound variation, but it's Blitz. It's about surprising the opponent, getting out of familiar waters. Very interesting to follow this.
You called it murky, unsound. That's my style of chess. So I'm a big fan of the opening played here. It's not going to be theoretical. And right now, the white knight can jump to f5. And I believe that's often played. But wow, he trades on c6. I feel like this is quite accommodating. So Vladislav, excuse me, has had a very successful opening.
Yes, the knight on g6 is so much more preferable than the knight on f6 in this structure. We often see that knight from f6 starting the journey, knight g4, knight e5, eventually landing on g6. It landed immediately.
And so knight takes c6 was not the most challenging line from Smirnov. And here for black, it's coming up with a plan. I think rook e8, just getting your rook to a semi-open file, seems about right. I wouldn't rush this pawn push to d5. I know a lot of people are tempted to play in the center, and Artemiev plays in the flank with pawn to a5, gaining a bit of space.
Wow. And Anton Smirnov going for queen h5. I feel like Smirnov is playing and treating this position very much like the four-knight Scotch. And I have played only one time against Anton Smirnov in the Batumi Chess Olympia 2018. And believe it or not, what it was four-knight Scotch.
So you have memories of him in that opening. And look at Artemiev. He hasn't done anything too drastic, but he's playing perfectly. And as you're highlighting, f6 in the near future, maybe knight e5, and there's some bishop g4 ideas or knight g4 ideas. So I feel like white's pieces are a little bit all over the place, and black centralizes knight and goes to e5. I prefer black's position for sure.
Yeah, black has a very flexible structure. Black hasn't determined his pawn structure like typically in the four-knight Scotch that we are referring to non-stop with this d7, d5. This is a much more flexible one. Black has this structure that even he can go for endgame and he can hope to try to outplay black. Yeah, there we go. f7, f5 played, challenging white's e4 pawn. Eventually, after the trade, black will beautifully develop that bishop from c8. Black has taken over the initiative.
And these double pawns on the c-file, they're actually not a bad thing. They're often criticized in endgames, king and pawn endgames in particular, but we're not really in a pure endgame just yet. So many pieces on the board, and the semi-open b-file is favorable for black. I think bishop d4 right now, Peter. Just put your bishop on d4, hit that knight on c3, maybe even take it to ruin white's pawn structure.
Yeah, there are many tempting options. This is the only problem. If you play a blitz game, it's so much more preferable that you only have one good move. There you have it, your move on the board.
It's a great choice because bishop takes c3, pawn takes e4 coming. Bishop d4 earned an exclamation point. I love it. I don't actually see how white deals with all these threats because, as you mentioned, a4, c5, rook b8, all sorts of options available for black. White doesn't have a plan.
Yeah, well, I think that good or bad, this bishop probably should be targeted. Another typical way of going knight a4, but that isolates the e4 pawn, and this is again the problem we are seeing. That's a horrible weakness.
And Artemiev, every single move he plays, you can see it. He just picks the piece up, gently places it down, but all of his gentle moves are strong ones, and the advantage is in black's favor. Just trading the right pieces, and now this knight can hop on over to c4, and it's played, and b2 is just in huge trouble.
Yeah, it's the Artemiev style to perfection. Look at this construction, the knight on c4 beautifully blocking the double pawns. Black is also threatening to enter to the first rank, pinning that bishop on the board already.
I'm looking to my side here, and I was wondering, is this 100% accurate? I think it's 99% accuracy from black. So maybe there was one moment where a move was probably slightly better, but everything that Artemiev has done is with purpose. There's a pin along the first rank. The rook can double in the b file. The knight on c4, it just stops the dark square bishop from developing and covers any sort of e4, e5 pawn push. So I think just make left for your king with h6 and then take this pawn on e4.
Wow, he just goes after the a pawn, but yes, it's a good call. Just in case, open some luft, create something not to eventually blunder any kind of rook f8 checkmate. Yeah, h3, h6 are played. Rook f4 on the board. Yeah, yes, now it's on the board. Okay. Eventually hinting at e5 and opening up the fourth rank. What a move.
It's funny though, because e5 is an idea and black still plays d5 and says, ha, you got me there, and I just pushed through it and everything is under control. I just feel like white has no plans whatsoever. It reminds me, very different pieces on the board, but that game that Magnus won against Fedoseev, where it just felt like white was completely restricted.
Yes, very much the same. Also, I feel that Artemiev's style is so similar to Magnus. Yeah, he loves this positional game. His moves have perfect harmony. It's almost like a music watching his games when he gets his structure. What he's lacking, I think, is a little bit opening knowledge. If his openings would be better, he would be clearly a 27-60 guy.
And he was there when he was younger, and then he dropped. But I'm with you. I think sometimes he even plays b3 on the first move, and he just plays to get a position where he can outplay his opponent. Here he's done just that. Anton Smirnov had no chance in this game. I see the feature chats coming in, Artemiev doing great. This isn't great. This is perfect. I really believe that this has been an exemplary game that I want to study now, because white was just a little bit slow out of the gates and didn't come up with plans, and this is how you get punished.
Yeah, and rook ff1 will be met by knight takes a3, I believe, that we can just lose the queen. Yeah,
he resigned, Peter.
Total domination.
He went rook f1 and knight takes a3, and then said, I don't want any more because the bishop takes the knight. You trade, the rook on e1 is hanging, so you don't even get to take that piece. The a pawn will go to the other side. This is a beautiful, beautiful game from Artemiev.
Yeah, fantastic. But the game also ended quite quickly, which probably gives us the chance to join in. For example, let's join in Magnus's action. I'm pretty sure that that game is still on. Let me pull up that game. Here it is. What do we see?
The bar is all the way up because of this exact maneuver. The knight came back to b3 and hits the rook. If the rook moves, the bishop drops. So the c2 pawn looks dangerous, but you're losing material for black.
Yes, that's the problem. Yeah, first I was also trying to orientate what do we see here, but yeah, Magnus is winning material.
And do you see that move, bishop e5? He could have taken the rook, but that rook is trapped in its place. So only after the bishop retreated did he take the rook, and now he has centralized his dark square bishop.
Yes, he rerouted it. The bishop is already in perfect position. I wonder, yeah, Magnus just goes for it, takes, eliminates the c2 pawn, and gets an easy technical win.
I love that transition. Very instructive from Magnus. He had an extra exchange, but there was that annoying passer on c2. Now, instead of being up a rook for a minor piece, he's simply up two pawns, and they're two separate pass pawns. Here's the a pawn, going all the way up to a7, then a g4 and h5, and get a net past h pawn. So domination in terms of the bishop coordination, and perfect game from Magnus.
Yeah, and it's, bishop e1. Look at this. Still trying. Rook takes f2 would have been checkmate.
It's always fun to see players come up with unique tactics. There's a resignation. Magnus Carlsen wins the game, and you see him analyzing with Conrad. I mean, there's a lot of respect to Conrad Holtz. Magnus knows him very well from the online sphere, but Conrad, he couldn't withstand the pressure from Magnus Carlsen today.
Yeah, let me pull up Dubov's game. Is there action? Yes, it's still live action there. Daniel Dubov against Alexander Ingic, the Serbian chess wizard, but he's in a lot of trouble here.
Yes, it looks like white is up. I can't even count 2 pawns, but it still looks a little bit messy, except if these queens come off, the game would immediately be over, and it looks like the a pawn can't be stopped.
Yeah, and the bishop on b7, the long diagonal. Okay, knight d5. Great.